You can't do that in a garage. There's just a few places in the world with the right equipment and only a few people in the world with the right training to be able to do that.
There is a moment in the hypercar world that nobody saw coming. A moment so unexpected, so completely out of character, for one of the most guarded, most secretive, most elite automotive brands on the planet, that when it happened, the entire car community stopped scrolling and stared. The CEO of Bugatti, not a PR manager, not a legal team, not a spokesperson. The actual CEO picked up his phone and changed everything. And the reason it happened, it all traces directly back to one man, a garage in England, and a garbage can that became the most famous piece of equipment in automotive history. This is the story of how a regular guy with tools and determination forced the hand of a billion-dollar brand. And what that CEO did next rewrote the rules of the hypercar industry forever. To understand why the CEO's response was so earth-shattering, you first need to understand what Bugatti does when one of its cars gets damaged. And the answer is simple: they erase it. When a Bugatti Chiron Per Sport in Miami collided with a delivery vehicle, the aftermath was not a simple insurance claim and a trip to a body shop. The car had sustained serious front-end damage. The carbon fiber monocoque showed minor structural cracking. The engine mounts were fractured. The entire front end was compromised. By any normal mechanical definition, this was a car in need of repair. But Bugatti does not deal in normal mechanical definitions. A factory technician flew in from France to inspect the wreckage. The verdict was swift and unambiguous: total loss. But here is where Bugatti's response crossed from corporate policy into something that felt deeply personal. They did not simply walk away. They locked the car's vehicle identification number inside their global system. Every authorized Bugatti dealer on the planet, from Monaco to Singapore to Beverly Hills, was now forbidden from selling a single component for this specific chassis. Not a sensor, not a bracket, not a clip. The car was effectively blacklisted from existence while still physically sitting on the ground. This practice is not an accident. It is a deliberate, calculated tool used by ultra-luxury manufacturers to maintain what the industry calls brand integrity. The logic goes something like this. A damaged Bugatti that gets repaired outside of factory standards could theoretically reflect poorly on the brand if something goes wrong at 200 miles per hour. The official line is safety. The reality, as we will see, is significantly more complicated. When the owner inquired about a factory restoration, the numbers arrived like a financial grenade. The front bumper assembly alone was quoted at a figure that could buy a brand new family home in many parts of the world. A single pair of headlights carried a price tag that would purchase 2 fully spec'd family sedans. The total parts estimate for a factory restoration reached figures that placed the repair cost in the same territory as several other luxury sports cars combined. This was not a repair quote. It was a signal. The message embedded inside those numbers was clear. The car belongs to us now, even if your name is on the title. Most people would have accepted that message. Most people would have called the insurance company, collected whatever settlement remained after the blacklist evaporated the car's value, and moved on. Mat Armstrong is not most people. Mat Armstrong is a car restorer from England who built a YouTube following by doing what the industry said could not be done: buying wrecked, destroyed, or written off vehicles and bringing them back to life. He has rebuilt Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and various supercars that insurance companies had long since given up on. His approach is methodical, transparent, and completely unintimidated by reputation. He sees a broken car. He sees a problem to solve. That is the entire philosophy. When the Chiron Per Sport came across his radar, the challenge was not just mechanical. It was philosophical. This car had not merely been damaged. It had been officially condemned by its own manufacturer and stripped of the identity that made it valuable. Taking on this project meant going to war with an institution that had never lost such a war before. The first major revelation came when Mat began disassembling the damaged front end and investigating the true scope of the damage. What he found contradicted the unrepairable label in a very specific way. Yes, there was structural damage. Yes, the engine mounts were fractured. Yes, the crash had sent a shockwave through the front of the car, displacing components and compromising critical systems. But the engine itself, the legendary 8-liter W16 heart that produces over 1,400 horsepower, was intact. The transmission was intact. The carbon tub, while cracked in places, had not suffered catastrophic failure. This car was not dead. It had been declared dead. The difference matters enormously. Mat's team began cataloging every damaged component and cross-referencing part numbers with other vehicles in the Volkswagen Group, the automotive conglomerate that owns Bugatti. What they discovered would later fuel a very uncomfortable public conversation. Several components carrying Bugatti's name and Bugatti's prices shared part numbers with high-end Audi and Bentley components. Sensors, brackets, fluid fittings, the kind of supporting hardware that makes a complex machine function, were not unique to the Chiron at all. They were shared platform components with a significant markup applied at the Bugatti level. This discovery did not diminish the engineering achievement of the Chiron. The engine, the monocoque, the aerodynamic system. These are genuinely extraordinary pieces of engineering with no true equivalent elsewhere. But the supporting ecosystem of parts that surround that engineering, that was a different story. The moment that the automotive internet will remember from this entire saga was not a legal filing. It was not a viral post. It was a garbage can. Bugatti had publicly maintained that splitting a Chiron, separating the front carbon monocoque from the rear powertrain subframe, was a procedure requiring specialized equipment so rare and proprietary that only 2 workshops on the entire planet were equipped to perform it. Specific hydraulic jig systems, precision laser-guided cradles, million-dollar infrastructure designed exclusively for this purpose. Mat Armstrong walked to the corner of a shop, retrieved a standard workshop trash can, removed its wheeled base, and used it to support the drivetrain while his team unbolted the 2 halves of a $4 million hypercar. When the front and rear sections separated cleanly, without catastrophe, without the carbon fiber cracking apart, without the prophecies of destruction coming true, the myth died. Right there on camera, in a shop in the English Midlands, the carefully constructed aura of inaccessibility that Bugatti had cultivated around the Chiron's mechanical complexity was punctured by a piece of plastic that costs $15. What the separation revealed was equally significant. The Chiron's architecture, for all its engineering sophistication, is fundamentally modular. The 2 halves are joined by a set of titanium fasteners, high-grade, precision-engineered, but subject to the same laws of physics as any fastener anywhere. There was no alien technology holding this car together. There was no process that defied comprehension. There was good engineering, secured with good hardware, built on a foundation that, with sufficient skill and knowledge, could be accessed by someone who was not wearing a white coat in a factory in France. The footage accumulated millions of views. Comments poured in from professional mechanics, aerospace engineers, and enthusiasts who had spent years assuming that hypercars existed in a different physical category from normal vehicles. The garbage can become a symbol, improbable, slightly ridiculous, and completely undeniable. As Mat's progress became increasingly public, the car's owner issued a challenge directly to Bugatti through social media. The message was simple: either unblacklist the car, or the parts would be sourced through 3D printing and CNC manufacturing. The threat was not empty. With the car already partially disassembled and documented, the dimensional data needed to replicate many of the components was either already in hand or accessible. For a brand whose parts pricing depends on a captive market, this threat was existential in miniature. The horseshoe grille, the front fenders, the headlight assemblies. These are components priced not just on the cost of manufacture, but on the understanding that if you own a Bugatti and you need one, there is only one place to get it. The moment a viable alternative supply chain comes into existence, that pricing model fractures. The automotive world expected what it always gets in these situations: a legal letter, a public statement of no comment, the grinding machinery of corporate consequence aimed at an individual who had gotten too close to the curtain. What it got instead was the CEO. Mat Armstrong is not a conventional automotive CEO. He built his first electric vehicle by converting a BMW in his garage as a teenager in Croatia. He founded a company that became the technological backbone of some of the world's most advanced electric hypercars. When the Volkswagen Group restructured its ultra-luxury holdings, it was Rimac who was handed the keys to Bugatti, not a career executive from within the traditional automotive structure, but an engineer-entrepreneur who still thinks like the garage builder he once was. When the social media ultimatum landed, Rimac did not forward it to the legal department. He responded personally. He reached out directly to the car's owner and opened a conversation, not with threats, but with engineering. He explained, in genuine technical terms, why certain structural components cannot be replicated with consumer-grade 3D printing materials when the loads involved can exceed 1,400 horsepower passing through a gearbox at race speeds. He talked about why the factory's involvement matters for safety, not just for brand control. But then he did something that nobody in the industry had done before at this level. He admitted the quoted restoration figure was not representative of what a real repair would cost. He acknowledged that worst-case insurance estimates had shaped a number that was, in practical terms, disconnected from the actual cost of making the car whole again. And then he unblacklisted the car. That phrase, unblacklisted the car, does not fully capture what it meant. Bugatti reversed a corporate death sentence. They acknowledged that a car they had written out of their system, a car they had stripped of the right to receive their support, was deserving of a second life. They opened the door they had welded shut. Rimac went further still. He posted a video response addressing the Mat Armstrong build directly and publicly. He was measured in tone, specific in his engineering critiques, and in a moment that the automotive community is still processing. He admitted to being a fan of Mat's content. The CEO of Bugatti, watching a man use a trash can to split his flagship product, and choosing admiration over litigation. He used the opportunity to clarify pricing myths that had grown in the retelling. The headlight cost that had circulated online at figures significantly higher than the actual number, for instance. He engaged with the technical substance of what Mat had uncovered rather than dismissing it. He invited conversation about a path forward that would be both financially realistic and mechanically sound. It was, by any measure, the most significant public gesture toward the independent repair community that the hypercar world had ever seen. The Mat Armstrong Bugatti story is not really about one crash siren per sport in Miami. It never was. It is about a question that the entire automotive industry has been quietly refusing to answer for 2 decades. Do you actually own your car? Modern vehicles are not just mechanical assemblies. They are software platforms with wheels. The engine management systems, the transmission control units, the safety systems. All of these run on code that the manufacturer controls. In some cases, a manufacturer's digital authorization is required before a car will accept a replacement part. In some cases, a VIN can be flagged in a global database, and no authorized source anywhere on the planet will service that vehicle. The question of mechanical ownership has become inseparable from the question of digital access. What Mat Armstrong demonstrated is that the mechanical side of this equation can be defeated with sufficient skill, creativity, and determination. The garbage can was not just a funny moment. It was proof that the physical architecture of even the most complex production car on the planet is within reach of a skilled independent technician. The proprietary jig's only mythology collapsed. The factory-only competence narrative dissolved. What Mat Rimac demonstrated is that the digital side, the blacklist, the VIN lock, the authorized dealer system, is not inevitable either. It is a policy choice. And policy choices can be reversed. When a CEO decides that engagement is more valuable than enforcement, the lock comes off. The question the industry now faces is whether Rimac's approach will influence other manufacturers, or whether it will remain a singular exception. The right to repair movement has long argued that the tools and software needed to service a vehicle should be available to the owner and to independent mechanics. This argument has been made in courtrooms, in legislative chambers, and in long policy documents that very few people read. It has never been made quite as vividly as it was in a workshop video where a $4 million machine was split in half with workshop waste equipment. Numbers and legal arguments reach lawyers. A garbage can reaches everyone. The timing of all of this was not accidental in its implications, even if it was accidental in its coincidence. At the same moment that Mat Armstrong was disassembling the past in his garage, Bugatti was preparing to introduce its future, a new model representing a philosophical shift in how the brand presents itself to the world. Rimac's stated vision for the next era of Bugatti centers on mechanical transparency and enduring engineering. The direction points toward naturally aspirated performance, the raw, audible, physically present kind of power that leaves nothing hidden behind layers of turbocharger complexity. The ambition, as Rimac has framed it publicly, is to build cars that are designed to last not just one owner's lifetime, but far beyond it. Cars that are machines first and status symbols second. Cars where the engineering is something to be understood and appreciated, not hidden behind a sealed panel and a warning label. That vision, whether intentionally or not, aligns almost exactly with what Mat Armstrong proved people want. The videos documenting the Chiron rebuild attracted viewers not just because they loved Bugatti, but because they love understanding how things work. They loved seeing the W16 engine with its cover off. They loved understanding why the car splits the way it does. They loved the moment when complexity became comprehensible. Rimac's engagement with this build was, in retrospect, a preview of the brand direction he is pursuing. A Bugatti that invites curiosity rather than deflecting it. A Bugatti whose engineering is a story rather than a secret. The car that Mat Armstrong is rebuilding will never be perfect in the eyes of a Concours judge. It will carry the history of its crash, its blacklisting, its resurrection, and the unprecedented corporate reversal that made that resurrection legitimate. It will be, in every meaningful sense, the most famous Bugatti on the planet, not because of what it is, but because of what it proved. Here is what the Bugatti story ultimately teaches us, and it goes well beyond one garage and one CEO. The hypercar industry, and by extension, every industry that prices products on artificial scarcity and controlled access, is facing a fundamental reckoning with what modern technology makes possible. CNC machining, 3D scanning, cross-platform part number research. These are not exotic capabilities anymore. They are available to determined individuals with the right knowledge and the right equipment. The old model said, if you can afford the car, you still cannot afford to fight us when it breaks. The new reality says, if you have enough skill and enough courage, you can demonstrate that unrepairable is a business decision, not an engineering fact. Mat Armstrong demonstrated the courage. Mate Rimac demonstrated that even the gatekeepers can choose to open the gate. And the millions of people who watched a trash can do the work of $1 million jig system demonstrated that there is an enormous, passionate audience for the truth about how extraordinary machines actually function. The Hypercar Handbook has not just been challenged, it has been rewritten. And the author was a man in a workshop in England who refused to believe that a bolt was more powerful than the person holding the wrench.